everyone, and welcome to Space Shastra, a podcast by She in Space. At She in Space, we believe that space is not just about rockets and satellites, it's about people, perspectives, and possibilities. Uh, Here, we don't talk about space as an industry, we really talk about space as a journey and the journeys people take, the risk they accept, and the space they really create for others along the way. So today's conversation is really special because it's honest, real, and rooted in lived experience. And I'm really excited to have Ayumi with us, someone who has worked inside a large space organization, built communities, and is really shaping how space ecosystem think about inclusion and leadership. So welcome Ayumi to Space Shastra
Thank you so
podcast.
much. I'm so excited to be talking with you today.
Thank you. So, Ayumi, before we talk about roles and titles, I would really love to know a little bit about yourself, your current role, your current work, and also what really defines you beyond your professional life.
Yeah, so I am currently a master's student, full-time master's student in mechanical engineering at Columbia University. I decided to go back for my master's because I did biomedical engineering in my undergrad time. And I realized I wanted to do aerospace. I thought, you know, I worked for Northrop Grumman for a little bit. So one of those, yeah, big primes, big organization. And it was a really great experience. I really enjoyed the community there. I enjoyed getting to work on some really cool projects there. But I thought it would be helpful to get a chance to, explore a little bit more about like all the different things. I was on the mechanical structures team there, but I wanted to learn about propulsion and astrodynamics and, all these other like different parts of the space industry. Um, it also didn't hurt that it was in New York, which is like the most fun and exciting place to live. So, when I'm not doing space stuff, I'm always trying to explore new restaurants with my friends. We're always trying to go and see shows here. They have like comedy shows. They have all sorts of like the Today Show and like the Tonight Show and like all those things. So, yeah, definitely love getting to explore all of that sort of thing, and travel and all of that, outside in my free time.
Yeah, that's really great. How you mentioned your journey, the values, the curiosity, and how you really want to experience, different discipline across the space industry. And I really love the way you are exploring in New York. I must say it's a best place to explore. So building on that, I would really like to ask, when you think about like the future, not just the next role or the next phase of your journey, what are your future career goals, or what kind of impact do you really hope to create through your work?
So I definitely am super passionate about human space flight in particular. I think it combines a lot of the stuff that I learned in undergrad with biomedical engineering, with the stuff that I'm learning now with mechanical engineering. When I was at Northrop, I got a chance to work on the habitation and logistics outpost.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, it's basically the habitation module for Lunar Gateway and the Lunar Space Station. So all like very cool human space flight stuff. My goals is to continue in that. The more that I talk with people in this industry, the more that I realize how much of an overlap there is. So honestly, like the microgravity experiments that you've talked about, I think it would be really cool to get to do some microgravity research. I'm hoping to do that at some point during my time at Columbia. I have been learning a lot about like flight controllers, getting the chance to, guide the future of human spaceflight so tangibly by getting to, own like a subsystem and, define like, this is how we solve problems when we're up there in space. That's something that I think would be really, really cool, that I really, really hope to get the opportunity to do.
That's really great. I think what really stands out to me is like how intentional you are about the impact, not just uh, growth about yourself, but growth around the ecosystem that surrounds you. And it's really essential for a person and also for the space industry itself. Uh, and this impact, I believe, is often comes from with a few uncertainties. So, what's a decision you made that really felt risky at the time, but ended up changing everything for you?
That's such a good question. And I would go back to New York. So,
Mhm.
I was working for Northrop Grumman. I was living at home. It was a very like great place to work, very like comfortable, thing. And then I was applying to grad schools and I managed to get in. And coming to New York was like such a big decision because, it's much more expensive here, obviously.
Yeah.
I was like, I want to make sure that when I'm investing in my education, that it's worthwhile. And, I would be just doing something completely different from what I was doing before. I was like, I'm not sure if it's, if the trade-offs will be worth it. I'm from like a small, like little like suburban area in Virginia. The big city, completely different. So I was like, I don't know what this new environment is going to be like. Um, and on top of that, like, New York is not the biggest place in the country for aerospace. I think a lot of people always talk about like California, Texas, Florida. Those are the big like space hubs. And so I was like, is it really going to be worth it to come here if there's nothing going on in space? But I am so glad that I was completely wrong about that. There's actually like, there is like a thriving startup economy here. I have gotten the chance to go to these little like space happy hours and,
Mhm.
meet people who are doing incredible work in the industry and they're, really changing just like step by step, like the little parts of the industry that all like are needed in order to accomplish, everyone's goals of like, one day having like real infrastructure in space. And the classes have been amazing. I've gone to just learn from some of the best in the industry. I've been super, super lucky with that, how it turned out. And yeah, I was scared that New York would be a little overwhelming. But it's actually been like the most like vibrant, energetic time of my life, honestly.
I think it takes a lot of self-trust, especially in an industry where the path isn't always clearly defined, but you somehow make it work and try to be your best in whatever possible way.
Absolutely.
And this brings me to a question we hear all the time from students. Many students believe you must be an aerospace engineer to work in space industry. So I would really love to hear, based on your journey, how true or misleading this assumption is.
That is one of my favorite questions. Because I think it is so, so true that you don't have to be an engineer
Mhm.
in order to work in the space industry. And like I honestly like fell to that mentality. I thought, yeah, I had to be an engineer if I wanted to work in space.
Mhm.
Um, but what I've started to find is that's really not the case. The past few years, I have met people who, like you, are doing like biology experiments in space. There's all these people doing space policy, space law, space business development. I mean, my older sister, she was working for Airbus in marketing, and so that just goes to show like she gets to use her creativity and like, all this marketing stuff. But it's like it's essential for the industry to thrive as a whole. Something that we have with the Asian Aerospace Organization, my organization, is that on Tuesdays we post about unconventional space careers.
Mm-hmm.
So we just talk about, what the different roles look like, different companies that are doing really cool work in that field. On our website, we have an opportunities tracker that has a list of all these unconventional careers. A couple of the really cool ones that I heard from a woman who works in hospitality, and now she's working for Blue Origin in making the whole astronaut experience, as great as it possibly can. And I heard from someone who worked in fashion design, and she started out in fashion design, and then she ended up helping to make blankets for spacecraft.
Oh, that's
So
really great.
very true that there's so many different ways that your path could go in the industry, and and skills that you learn in other fields that you never would have thought to be applicable could still be applicable to your work in the space industry.
Right. I'm really glad you said that because it really immediately expands who gets to see themselves in the industry, especially when you talk about incredible stories from designers to,
Mhm.
designing blankets in space. Who could have thought about this? So thank you so much to share this.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's just so cool, all the different variety of things that people really don't know about.
Right, right, right. That's great. So, uh, through this, we know that space always look very glamorous from outside. So, what's one reality about working in this field that people rarely talk about, but you believe that you should know when you want to step in this industry?
I think, yeah, space looks really glamorous and it is like an amazing place to work. I think the people or everyone that I've met in the industry is really great. I will say, you know, I think there is a lot more of, people, sort of talk about like, the failures of, like things exploding and, rapid unscheduled disassembly, that kind of thing. But it is a reality that, when you work on something and you really like pour your heart into trying to make this, something that works. And then if it doesn't, I think it's a lot more stressful and frustrating than people really realize. I think, luckily, like, most things actually do go well, but to see something that you spent months and, for some people like, years or even decades working on, if that doesn't work, it's really, really disappointing. So I think that's definitely something to keep in mind for people entering the space industry, high risk, but high reward too.
Mhm. Honestly, this is really important, especially for young professional who still are forming their expectation when they see about, or when they see, or when they thought about entering into industry. And these are really important aspects to look into.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I
Absolutely.
must say, yeah, you have seen this industry from inside as well, and we know that you have worked at larger organization, Northrop Grumman's, and what are the different skills or mindset that actually matters most in day-to-day life when it comes to working in such large organizations beyond the technical expertise?
I think being able to like talk with a whole bunch of different people and being very flexible because, you know, things might seem like they're proceeding in one way, and then you find out some new information and things like completely shift. So I
Mhm.
think that's a pretty important thing to be able to be just like very patient with the process, like things, sometimes things will be like really crazy and you'll have like, tons and tons of work to do. You'll be like so stressed and stuff. And then sometimes you'll have like you'll just be kind of sitting there like waiting for the next assignment to come in. So just yeah, being very patient with the whole thing and being able to talk to different people. I think taking initiative at a big company is really big. You want to like really try to distinguish yourself, um, and you want to be able to show up to meetings and really like own what little small part that you're doing might be. So I think it's really important to take initiative and be flexible and patient with the process.
That's a very powerful reminder that careers are built not just say on knowledge but on how you show up every day, and it's really essential because space is not a sprint, it's like a marathon, so you need that patience to hold in there and then work your stuff, try to be as consistent as you can, and eventually you will get to see those successes. I must say that this mindset often leads to the people to build beyond themselves. So I really want to know what really motivated you to co-found your own initiative, the Asian Aerospace and Aviation Organization, and why was that important to you?
I think it was so I went to a conference. It was the International Astronautical Congress. And it's this big global conference. I'd been to a couple conferences in the US before, which were always like amazing experiences. But this time it was my first like really big international one. And I went to this conference. I met, so many people. I'm very thankful to Space Generation Advisory Council. They're a young professional group. They really were the ones who like helped me to go to this thing. But something that I noticed was when we were at one of these dinners, there's a CEO on stage who was a Japanese CEO, and my background's Japanese. Um, and seeing the leadership that was up there that was Asian was sort of striking to me. I was like, like if I think back to the US based conferences that I've been to, there's like maybe like a handful. Um, and so seeing that was really pivotal for me to realize, that there is such a potential for it. But, also my whole life I had heard about this thing called the bamboo ceiling, which is that, Asian people in the US face challenges with getting leadership. They're often seen as sort of like quieter and less likely to take charge. So seeing that, kind of put into practice and seeing the ways that it could, alternative ways that it could be, was what really motivated me. And so I started, looking into that, just like online and asking around, is there something for Asian people in the space industry? And I kept coming across that the answer was no. And that was just really surprising to me. So I was like, okay, well, someone should change that. And I collaborated with some people that I knew, and we started this thing, and it's been really awesome to get a chance to just talk with more people in the industry about this. Everyone that I've talked to has been like, yeah, like I'm surprised that there isn't something like this already. So it's been really awesome getting to start this up.
Yeah, I think I am also surprised to know these challenges, and this is a real big gap that all the Asians have. And Yeah, because community building is rarely easy. Uh, but it's how real change becomes sustainable. And I really believe that your initiative with Asian Aerospace and Aviation Organization will be a key bridge gaps between the challenges that we have. And it leads towards more sustainable, more motivated, and more successful solutions.
Absolutely. That's the hope. That is definitely
Right. So, as you know that with the initiative that you have, I am also starting this platform, She in Space, and it is really aligned with why She in Space exists. So, I would really like to ask, when you first came across with the vision of She in Space, what really stood out to you, like personally?
I really liked, the first thing that I saw was the LinkedIn page and then I saw the Instagram page. I thought that the graphics and the kinds of things that you were posting that was the first thing that sort of struck me. And then, I'm like well aware of all the things that women have to face in this industry, not even just like, blatant sexism or misogyny or like, even putting that aside, like, there's been a lot of rooms that I've been in, like you've mentioned, where I was the only woman in the room. And that's just a little bit, a little bit more daunting, a little bit more of a challenge. And so when I saw She in Space, I was like, this would be such an awesome opportunity for young girls to, start to see themselves, to see that, they don't maybe necessarily have to be engineers to be in the space industry. I think that's something that you guys highlight.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I just thought it was such a great way to try to connect, especially knowing that you're in India, like to connect across these like geographical barriers and that kind of thing. I thought was such an awesome way to do it because, I'm aware of some like women in space sort of organizations that are predominantly based in the US. Probably because I'm based in the US, but to see like an international perspective of it was really cool.
Yeah, thank you. Hearing that really means a lot because the intention has always been to build something that feels real, not just the aspirational, or not just the aspirational on the surface, but to support you in practice. So, thank you so much for really sharing your thoughts.
Yeah, yeah. I
Uh,
think it's really cool work that you guys are doing. Really cool work.
So, for someone listening to this podcast and feeling inspired, I would really like you to share, say, if a young woman or young student wants to enter the space industry, what's one practical step you can suggest them right now?
So I think the best thing that you could do if it's possible would be to find an organization of some sort. So for me, that was Students for the Exploration and Development of Space, SEDS. I always had this interest in it, but I also didn't really know sort of what the scope of the space industry was. And getting to be part of this organization, and we had a chapter in my undergrad, and then I went to the national conference, and that was truly just such a life-changing event for me. So, if you had that or if you were able to start that up, I would say that would be, number one would be like just being surrounded by people who are just as passionate as you is truly like something that's just so helpful. It really like motivates you to be like the best that you possibly can be. But that's not possible for everyone,
Yeah.
especially in like smaller areas. So my other piece of advice would be to find a mentor. So, like your initiative is global. It's not restricted to just, people in India, just people in the US or anything. trying to find someone in the space industry doing something that interests you. We also will be starting up a mentorship program in a few weeks. So, yeah, I think that mentorship is something that is, you know, I think people who have good mentors realize the benefits of it. If you don't, then you don't realize how much it really could be helping you. So, yeah, I would say, and like cold emailing or cold messaging on LinkedIn or anything like that, like, I think that can work really well too. I've had some really cool conversations with people just through like cold messaging them, and people are like so much more responsive and willing to talk about things in this industry than you would have really expected.
I think this is really actionable advice. Thank you so much, Ayumi, and that's exactly what people need to start. So, with this, I want to touch on something more personal now. We often talk about barriers women face in STEM industry or in space industry or a male dominated fields. Can you share any specific moment where a man genuinely supported you in a way that actually changed an opportunity or your confidence during your journey?
Ah, I would say that honestly, I've been lucky. There's been a lot of men who have really supported me in my journeys. One of them, Troy Bashir, he also works for Northrop Grumman. He, we met at an SGAC event, and something that I noticed that he did was he was, this big speaker at this event, but he called out some people specifically. He like somehow he asked for a list of the attendees ahead of time, and he
Mhm.
went through and people that he had some sort of affiliation that he recognized. So for example, like my friend Becky, she went to Duke with me and he saw that she was still at Duke and he like said something to the audience. He was like, "Is Becky here? Like, I'm so sorry about Duke's loss last night because we had a really big loss." And he just has such a personable you know, perspective on things. And like since then, since that first meeting where, we got a chance to talk, he's just been like so supportive of me in my career. He's, shown me opportunities that I'd never heard about before. We've gotten a chance to just like talk and, have like it's so incredible to me that, he takes the time out of his day. But yeah, he's just like been so supportive of, he was really supportive of me and like, continuing my education. And he has just, yeah, he's really honestly like done so much for me. And I am so appreciative of all the help that he's given me.
At stories like this, I really believe that it shows what real allyship looks like in practice, and it is really essential that we also share those stories to the world. And before we wrap up, I want to ask something very important. What's one truth about the space industry young professionals should know before they romanticize it? And finally, what excites you most about the future of space industry?
There's so much to be excited about in the space industry. Like I've said, my thing that I'm most excited about is human space flight. So, the upcoming Artemis mission,
Mm-hmm.
going around the moon is going to be really, really exciting and definitely something that's easy to romanticize. I think that the commercial space stations that are coming up are such a cool opportunity to, increase the number of people that we can get up there. I know that there's some really interesting like collaborations, partnerships. So like Axiom Space is collaborating with Prada on their spacesuit design. I think it's really cool how, for a long time, I think space has been seen as like just a NASA thing, or and then it was like maybe like just a NASA and SpaceX kind of thing. But with these new players coming in with commercialization, with the global stage too, you know, the stuff that China's doing, the stuff that India is doing, Japan, I think there's, you know, there's so many like emerging space economies. I'm also Taiwanese, so the emergence of Taiwan's space generation and that kind of thing is really, really exciting to me because I think it means that, you know, the whole world will start to take notice, the whole world will start to care more, and that will just, you know, fuel like a huge exploration, just, you know, of all the different worlds that are out there.
Let's wrap up with this podcast. And thank you so much, Ayumi, for showing up today with so much honesty and depth. The conversation like this reminds us that the space industry is not just built by technologies or those titles, but by the people like you who are willing to take risks and build communications and quietly create that space for others along the way. What I truly appreciate about your journey is that it really reflects something we deeply believe in at Sheen Space, that there is no single way to belong here. You don't have to, fit a predefined role. You really don't
Mhm.
have to follow like a linear path, which is already
Mhm.
defined. And you even don't have to wait for permissions to take up to space. So yeah, for anyone who like listening today, whether you are a student, a professional, or someone who's standing at the edge of curiosity, I would really like to say that remember this: space industry needs more than engineers and mission. It really needs a diverse voices, different ways of thinking, and people who are willing to build ecosystem, like not just a career. So, Space Shastra, this podcast really exists to share these real stories, that remove the myth and acknowledges the challenges and still leaves room for hope. So, thank you for being a part of this conversation, Ayumi. And thank you to our listeners for choosing to listen, learn, and even imagine more inclusive future in space. So, this was Space Shastra is presented by She in Space. So thank you so much, Ayumi, and I really enjoyed this conversation today.
I really enjoyed it too. I'm looking forward to more conversations in the future.